Welcome to this interview from Go Natural Education. I'm your host, Steve Melito. Today we're talking to Dr. Andre Loy, the co-author of the Regenerative Agriculture Solution. This important new book from Chelsea Green Publishing explains how regenerating our forests, rangelands, and farming ecosystems can help restore our climate and our communities. Dr. Loy is the International Director of Regeneration International, an organization that promotes healthy food, farming, and land use systems. He is also the author of Myths of Safe Pesticides and Poisoning Our Children. Dr. Loy, welcome to Go Natural Education.
Thanks, Steve, and it's just great to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
So the way that I learned about your book was an email from your publisher, Chelsea Green Publishing. And the email posed the question: is it possible that the solution to climate change lies in a quote waste agricultural product? And I was wondering if you could talk about that one a bit.
Okay. The book starts with essentially the story about a group of brothers in the high desert of Mexico that essentially used the discarded leaves of the agave plant and turned them into valuable forage by fermenting them. And why this is important, agaves are sort of, when they're fully grown, the heart of it is used to make tequila, mezcal,
Yes.
as everybody knows. But these leaves are thrown away because most plants, believe it or not, don't like to be eaten. And unlike animals that we can usually escape predators or fight predators, plants can't. So their usual best defense is to poison predators to stop them
Sure.
make themselves inedible. And so agaves, like a lot of plants, put out these compounds like saponins, lectins, tannins, phytates, oxalates. There's a whole range of these compounds. What the Flores brothers did is they actually fermented it, same way we will make something like sauerkraut or kimchi. And by fermenting it, it breaks down, the fermentation process breaks down all these toxic compounds. And now these leaves are an excellent form of forage, very, very palatable. The leaves are actually a little bit low in protein. And agaves grow, they come from an ecosystem that starts in the southwest of the United States, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and then down through the central desert and ends slightly north of Mexico City. And the other major plant in this ecosystem is the mesquite tree. And mesquites, the pods are edible. A lot of plants actually put out edible pods because they want to encourage animals to eat it and in the process distribute their seeds. Oaks do that with squirrels and so on. It's a very standard way. And the pods are always used as like a poor man's flour, but it's a legume. Legumes are like alfalfa, for instance, are high in protein. They're always used as feed, but its leaves, once again, are full of tannins and other compounds. It doesn't want its leaves eaten. And the other thing to defend itself, it's got lots of nasty, sharp spikes. It wants to make sure that whoever eats it suffers. So by doing the same thing, actually finally chopping it up, it chops up the spikes, and then fermenting it. It's called an anaerobic fermentation. It's the same way, like I said, we make sauerkraut or kimchi, and they're mixing that in with the chopped up agave leaves. Now end up with this perfectly balanced high protein feed supplement. And Where this is important is that these areas are some of the most overgrazed areas. The ecosystem itself gets cleared, it's bare soil, it gets washed away. Usually by the end of the rainy season, it's essentially no feed. The animals are half starved, suffering really badly. The environment is suffering. The whole thing is, it's lose-lose. What we can do here now is take the animals off the pasture, these systems in the dry season, and feed them with all this silage made from the agave and the mesquite. We can rest the system. At the same time, the animals don't lose condition. They actually put on really good conditions. So in the end, the ecosystem starts to recover and regenerate. The animals are healthier. The other really brilliant thing about this is what we're doing now is regenerating the natural native ecosystem. So the whole purpose of what we do now is instead of clearing ecosystems to graze animals, to start planting more mesquite, more agaves, still have the grass and everything in it. So we actually start regenerating the natural ecosystem, and through this, essentially sustainable harvest, the local people now can produce more animals per acre. So this is, the ultimate win-win. We can start, the other thing, by regenerating these ecosystems, when I talk about it, we bring more rain. We start cooling the climate. There's all these other benefits that flow on. The people now generate more income. We're regenerating communities, and this is what we're talking about, the migration crisis. A lot of these people are, because of the degradation, the droughts, want to migrate north for better opportunities. By regenerating their ecosystems, by allowing them to actually now produce more animals, better quality, earning more income, you actually see the whole, we actually start to reverse migration crisis. And in the book, we give it different examples, Ethiopia, other places. The children actually start to come back. It goes the other way because they want to be part of their community, and now they have the opportunities they never had before.
Right. Good point. So another thing I wanted to ask you about, I did a search on regenerative agriculture on Google, and it pulled up more results than I could probably read. Maybe not my lifetime, but a very long time. And then I did another search on the volume. How many people are searching for regenerative agriculture? And it's over 12,000 people a year. So in such a crowded landscape, why did you write your book, The Regenerative Agriculture Solution? What drove you to do this?
Okay, that's a really good question, and I really like the way you framed it, because we started it. If you look, if you want to go back to 2014, when there's a handful of us put the steering committee together, the word regenerative agriculture rarely used. And as a group of us, we're actually in a meeting in the Rodale headquarters in 2014 when the big climate change meeting was on in New York. And that was Dr. Vandana Shiva, Ronnie, Steve Rye, who was the CEO of Macola, and myself. And we, then realized at that meeting that we really needed to get our organizations to work together to have an impact, because we're realizing that we had good messages on how to use agriculture to reverse climate change, but no one was hearing it. In those meetings, we then decided that the term we wanted to use was regenerate, because you wanted to regenerate all of agriculture. And that stage, I was international president of the organic industry. Ronnie, of course, the Organic Consumers Association, Vandana, a very big advocate of organic agriculture. But we realized if we used the word organic, we would lose people. After 100 years, we were less than 1% globally. We didn't have that time to, in 100 years or 1%, 200 years, double that with 3%. It's a nothing. How do we impact industrial agriculture, which is an industrial threat? An existential threat to us on the planet. And so the word regenerative is neutral. It's positive. We don't carry the baggage of other systems. Everybody, farmers are in crisis all around the world. Everybody knows we need to regenerate agriculture. And then the positive message that we can, instead of closing down farming, which is what's happening, people like, Al Gore and others are talking about, Bill Gates, you need to get rid of agriculture because it's a major problem. We wanted to show how agriculture is a major solution by regenerating soils. And so we then had an international meeting in Costa Rica, and Ronnie raised several $100,000 to bring people from the global south. So it wasn't just us in the north. We wanted the whole world to be there, and the whole world was there. It's beautiful. Every arable continent, we had people. And out of that, those people went back inspired. That's actually when we formed Regeneration International, 2015 in Costa Rica. People went back to every corner of the planet, and we got regeneration out. And if you have a look from that time on, that term just took up, and the level that it's took off, it's just absolutely surprised us. But so many of the people in our formative meeting, like Kiss the Ground, and you can look at various organizations, Carbon Underground, different universities, other people, started putting out this message, regenerative, and it stuck. It resonated because everybody agrees we have to regenerate agriculture.
It's a great term. It's one that we're fond of using at Go Natural Education. And again, it's an honor to talk to one of the pioneers behind the term. For your book, you had a co-author. It's my understanding that he didn't live long enough to see the book published. I was wondering if you might tell us about him.
Yeah, okay. Ronnie started this book. It was originally his book, and it's going to be called The Way of the Agave, because Ronnie was the one, when he met the Flores brothers, realized the potential of this. And so he wrote 2 draft chapters and sent it to Chelsea Green, his publisher. But Chelsea Green just felt it would be too limited, not a big enough audience, and wanted him to do something on a larger scope. So he started doing that, and Ronnie and I, how can you say, we started Regeneration International. We were in contact nearly every day, and so I was one of the people involved in helping him put together this new proposal and the outline of the book. And so he put in the proposal, and it was accepted. And then, unfortunately, not long afterwards, he passed away quite suddenly from bone cancer. Big shock to all of us. And even now, we really, really miss Ronnie. Ronnie was larger than life. Such a great human being in the many things he's done to improve this planet. Anyway, his wife, widow Rose, contacted me, and also the editor at the time, Ben Trollinger, was also actually, ironically, he was the editor of my last book from Acres USA called Growing Life. So I knew Ben, and he also, they contacted me and said, "Look, would you be willing to finish this book?" And I know that's what Ronnie would want. And so, of course, I'm going to say yes. So I had 2 draft chapters, but I knew the outline. And so I really then wrote pretty well the whole book. We left the 2 draft chapters, really only corrected typos because we wanted Ronnie's voice to be captured in it, and that to me is really important instead of editing it and everything. So you could hear Ronnie's voice, and that's the chapter that starts the book, sets the scene.
That's great. That's great. So someday I hope you get a chance to meet the founder of Go Natural Education. He's a farmer in Florida named Gildanio, and he's opened my eyes to a lot of things. And he wanted me to ask you a question. I think you've answered part of it, but his question was this: what is the net effect of regenerative agriculture's contributions to carbon sequestration in a healthy environment?
Okay, that's an excellent question. So I've got a whole chapter on that in the book, and I've actually published over the years quite a few peer-reviewed papers looking at if we start adopting best practices. And this is really important. I want to say here is that you've got a lot of scientists just wasting time on what we call low ball, and a lot of money as well. Systems that when we look in industrial agricultural systems are either losing soil organic matter or barely increasing it. So these are the scientists who always attacking us, saying that we're overestimating it. We're not. What we're talking about is, we don't waste any more time on these destructive industrial agriculture systems, which are a major part of the problem. And in the book, I actually show the loss of soil organic matter is a massive contributor to the carbon dioxide going up in the atmosphere. I want to say that the loss of forest and loss of soil organic matter contributes more carbon dioxide than fossil fuels, to put things into perspective. We stop that loss. We just stop the loss. That's a massive difference. But what I'm showing is that we can now reverse that loss. We can actually draw down more carbon dioxide than is being emitted. We can go negative, not net zero, negative, and take it down and reverse it. And I give multiple examples of these best practices. And the thing is about these best practices, I'm not talking about academic airy-fairy, I'm talking about real things being done and initiated by farmers and ranchers. They're out there already. They're doing it now. They don't need to be invented. We just need the funds to scale it up, to incentivize, to pay people to change their practices from those that are degenerative to those that will regenerate our ecosystems, our farming systems, and our climate.
I couldn't agree with you more. I've been listening to a series of webinars recently for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, the Long-Term Agricultural Research Initiative, and there was a fascinating one about the southeastern U.S. and some resistance to regenerative agriculture. And the presenter proposed that incentives, essentially financial incentives, could be the solution. Would you concur with that?
Exactly. In fact, the last chapter in the book is precisely on that. It's essentially the way that Ronnie and I, the system that we have developed, that what we want to do is see, at the moment, there's trillions of dollars, and I'll say wasted, in the whole environmental management and climate, in the ESG sector, in climate change. It's just, you look at all the buckets of billions and billions of dollars, it adds up to trillions. And, you talk about the meta crisis. Every indicator we look at, we're getting worse. All that money is a waste. We're not getting better. Well, we just need a fraction of it. But give us 1%, $1 billion, and start. What we need to do now is incentivize people to change their practices and pay them for the multiple ecosystem services of regenerating farm system, our forest systems, our communities, and at the same time, by regenerating forests and our farming systems, we're removing the main greenhouse gases, reversing the climate. Now, this is already being done by people, but we don't pay them. In fact, under the current system, because of the way it works, that it's got is what's called additionality. It's got, whatever you're doing, it's got to be additional to what is happening now. So all the people doing the right thing, if you've regenerated a forest at the back of your place, that forest you have at the moment is providing multiple ecosystem services, but under the current system, you can't get paid for it. Now, if the previous owner had cleared it, smashed it all down, and you started regenerating, then you can get paid for it. It's wrong. And what we're doing is we're stealing from the people who are doing the right thing. We need to pay them, because without those forests, without these farming systems, we would be far worse. And so what we want to see is that the money, and like I said, there's no shortage of it, but the priorities have to change. The people who are doing the right thing get paid for the service of doing it. And this isn't carbon trading, by the way, which, how can you say, makes a handful of people on Wall Street very rich. But on the whole, more and more is being exposed for all the scams. And we go through a whole lot of that, particularly blood carbon, where they are essentially throwing Indigenous people off their land who looked after these, First Nations people. It's been their country, their nation since time immemorial, and they're being thrown off, murdered, killed, villages burnt for carbon credits. They're the most extreme examples. The other ones are fraud. What we want to see is not a tradable commodity, but it's the same thing. We pay a doctor for a service. We pay a dentist for a service. We pay a mechanic for a service. Fee for service. Pretty simple. Restoring the climate, restoring the environment by looking after a forest, by doing the right farming system, is a service. And it's a huge service. So we need to start redirecting our priorities and start paying for that instead of taking it for free. In other words, we're actually stealing.
Yes. Sue and I had an amazing conversation before I pressed record, and it turns out that the land I live on is owned by what used to be owned by a friend of yours. And so you've been here before. And
Yeah.
I'm wondering, as a small farmer, I have just a small farm, what are some practical tips I can do to practice regenerative agriculture?
Okay. Look, probably one of the most practical ones, nothing. I'll tell you why. Actually, I suppose why we decided to use the term regenerative goes back to Bob Rodale, the son of J.I. Rodale, who put out the word organic. And Bob put out the concept of regenerative organic. And, it didn't really go very far in the 1980s, but, those of us who got a long history in the organic sector, for me, I started farming in the 1970s and I'm still farming. Bob Rodale, one of our heroes, because he started the Rodale Institute and the farming trials. But he put out the concept of regenerative organic, which never really caught off, but never really took off. But part of it, I always remember this, is if we disturb an ecosystem and we stop the disturbance, nature will regenerate it. And that's the power of regeneration. And that was the one that really struck with me, why we needed this term regenerative. In many ways, all we need to do is stop the disturbance. And nature will fix it up. Nature's got that ability. So that's the simplest. But then there's a whole range of other ways of regenerating. And I suppose, a lot of people are trying to say, we need to have a standard, we need this, and they're trying to narrow it down. We've actually sort of avoided it and tried to dissuade this, because this is the place of incredible innovation at the moment. And if you want to destroy innovation, standardize it. Anything outside the standard now cannot be done. So, and this innovation is being not led by academics, not led by bureaucrats, not led by scientists, it's led by farmers, us.
Yes.
We are the ones out there doing it, and we want to keep this space open and allow, the flow of ideas. This is like a renaissance in farming, the best way to put it. We've never seen a time where people have been inspired now to start regenerating agriculture, and we need to allow this flowering of systems and ideas. And this is what we're seeing. In the book, I give lots of examples, and there's many more, and there's many more yet to come. So, I suppose you asked me what to do. I just want to say there's so many ways to do it. And that is the really powerful thing about this, about what is happening.
Good, good. So let's talk about your book here before we wrap up. How do people get their hands on it? What do they need to do? Where do they go?
Okay. How can you say? I actually prefer people go to our publisher, Chelsea Green. They're a great publisher. They're just for me, a really caring, environmentally conscious organization. Started in Vermont. So that I'd like to see them get the sales. But on the other hand, I know Chelsea Green likes people to buy it from Amazon, because that way they get all the rankings and all the things you get from Amazon. So either way, just Google it and you'll see, the two will come up at the moment will be Chelsea Green and Amazon, and whatever is easiest for you.
Very good. Dr. Andrew Lloyd, thanks so much for being part of Go Natural Education.